Hey, Ken, good to see you there. So we've got a couple of you. I am going to post the Zoom link because I want to share my Zoom link with everybody. So let's so feel free to join me there. I am going to get started. I see I have a couple of you on. So welcome to my channel. We're doing Stellarium, and it's going to be a fairly loose. It's going to be fairly loose. Let's see. I think I have participants in. Let me make sure. Waiting room admit. So feel free to join. Ed Norris is here. Come on in. Let's see. I think I got another one. Ken, you're here. See if anyone else joins in. I'll put this over here. Again, for who just joined, you can join me live at the Zoom link. I think that link stays persistent. So for those that would like to join, and you're also welcome to stay on the live stream through YouTube, especially if that'll be easier if you don't have Zoom. So I am going to get started. So those of you that are here, you are welcome to, let's see, I'll put you all over here in this screen. You are welcome to unmute and ask questions. Let me make sure that I, that says mute all. Let's see, unmute Ed Norris, unmute. So you all are welcome to ask questions, and if there's anything particular that you're interested in seeing, then fire away. I am going to start with the fact that it's cloudy and that this is, when it's clear, this is generally what our night sky tends to look like. However, I always like to, view Stellarium in super dark sky mode, which that's how I like to view Stellarium, because that's what we want. Nice dark sky. The field of view says 60 degrees. We tend to see at around 50. So this is more accurate as far as if you were looking at the night sky right now with Superman vision, this is generally what you would see. The brightness of the moon wouldn't affect you. Here, this is how you really see things because of the brightness of the moon. So what I'd like to do is simply take requests of those that are watching on the live stream and those that have come and joined the Zoom meeting. If there's any requests of any objects that you want to see, feel free to let me know. I'll start with these bright objects here that if you were watching a live stream presentation, you would likely be seeing. So we'll start with Jupiter. Basically, how Stellarium works, and I think we have someone that's joining. Let's see, participants. Yo, that's right, Ken is coming back in. So Ken should be joining. There we go. Ken, here you
had to get out of YouTube because in the background I was getting the YouTube thing and it was repeating. I couldn't get away from this screen, so I left you and came back. But here I am. That was terrific with David and the other guys. I really,
yes, it was. Those of you that the Ask an Astronomer panel, it was a very terrific panel and a lot of tough questions were posed to our professional panel, and they answered them all.
Jim Forrester had mentioned that at the formation of the Big Bang, which is what I was referring to with that 24%, that the universe was made up of 24% helium at that time. And I think that may be the correct answer of that. They didn't know it because they said everything was hydrogen, but I'm not real positive of that. I think that we have lots of helium in the universe. So,
yeah, and I thought hydrogen and helium were the two first elements.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's all that was there. It was mostly like you said, it would have been 76% hydrogen if you do the simple math.
The math, right.
And so that's where you would end up. Speaking of hydrogen, this planet is made up of hydrogen. Let's go ahead and talk about how we can use Stellarium. There is a telescope option here, and I'm gonna expand my screen. Let's configure a virtual telescope. We'll pretend we've got one.
Okay.
And then we'll go okay. So now we're gonna set our telescope to go view Jupiter. So we're gonna slew it there, and there it goes. Virtual telescope. Now I took off the reticle because it's hard to see the actual object. I've set this up so that you can see the view. That's through a small f5 refractor telescope with a 50 millimeter wide angle lens. But let's suppose we use a 24-inch Cassegrain, such as the one from the McMath telescope. That's what Jupiter looks like through the McMath. Now I think I can take these labels off. Let's see if I can do that. If I go planet labels off, there is what you're looking at through our telescope, and that is the current alignment of 3 of the moons. We'll put the labels back on. That would be Ganymede, the larger one, Io, and Europa. So Callisto. So if we go out some, there's Callisto off to the left. So this is giving, of course, an accurate look of how Jupiter looks. Now at Stellarium, you can dig in a little further. So you can just go to your field of view of what you want, and you can zoom right in. And now Jupiter is, I can center Jupiter. This is what it would look like through a telescope. You see there's a small spot. This is not the Great Red Spot. It is not visible right now. If we were to look it up or to fast forward time, we could see if and when the Great Red Spot rotates around. So that's what I'm doing. So now you can see Jupiter's rotation as time goes on. This is 9:30. You can kind of see it rotating. We can be impatient and move it even faster. And then we'll stop it. There is something going on. There is a shadow of a planet that is going to be visible on Jupiter. Now, of course, because it's cloudy, this is about the only way you're going to see it, unless it happens to clear up, or if our live viewer whose setup is in New Mexico has a clearer shot at it, he could image this. But this is what it looks like. So let me fast forward a little bit more. And it rotates and daytime comes. So no Great Red Spot for tonight, but we let's go back to date and time and reset it to now. So this is basically how you let's see, it's 9, that's 12, that's 21. Oh, the Great Red Spot was out. It was out at 8:43. There's a Great Red Spot. So if you had the opportunity to view Jupiter from at 8:43 p.m., you would have seen the Great Red Spot.
And that thing zips around like crazy.
Yes, it does. So this is basically one of the uses of Stellarium, is to simulate how things would look. Let me see, my field of view needs to go to 60. And if you want to simulate how the eye sees, make sure your field of view is set here at 50.8 degrees, or somewhere between 50 and 60 is how we see the night sky directly. So what about Saturn? How about we'll take a look at Saturn. We'll slew the telescope to it. That's about how quick a real telescope would slew to Saturn. And we look at it from, this is our McMath telescope at Peach Mountain. One day, we do hope that you will be able to join us, but we're doing this virtually because we want you to be safe. And Ken, I think how large is the at the observatories you all use? How large is that telescope?
Well, the refractor is 8 inches, and the reflector, and we have the 20 inch Dobsonian. I think it's 22 inch.
Okay, so it would be close.
And yeah, that's quite a piece of equipment. Both of them are. They're really great.
Yeah, like you can see the magnification here, 476 power, and it's a touch fuzzier in the actual instrument, but you do see things like, if you notice, there's a little bit of detail depending on how your live stream's coming out. There's a little bit of detail with the Cassini division being visible here. And the ink, when you see it with your own eyes and it's a good steady night, you can just see the inky gap. And I'll show you what that looks like if, supposing you had the power to view what the Hubble sees. We'll center Saturn and we'll just scroll right in. So right about here, I think, is what Hubble can do for Saturn. And when you see images of Saturn, it's getting to about here, and there's the inky gap. Yeah. This is what, a 0.02 degree field of view. It may actually be further out. I would have to look that up. But what Cassini was able to do was this: get right in. Now I know that with versions of Stellarium and other astronomy planet software, you can orbit Saturn. We won't do it here. We'll just stick with showing how Saturn looks. The rings will become edge on again in the not too distant future. Fortunately for us, they're still open 20 something degrees where you get a good view of the rings in a telescope. So again, your view in the telescope in some of the better telescopes around is more like this, but with your eyes, you pick up those details. It's not as grandiose as that, but that's what this software is for. Speaking of Saturn, you'll notice it has bands as well and spots, and there's the hexagon up here. In a telescope, if you image it, and we have images that come out to about that big or maybe that big, imagers can get that hexagon in the picture. So it's quite possible to image Saturn. And these are the moons. You would see a bright spot here. That would be Titan. Looks like it's further away than all of the others. I believe that's because there are other moons that are close, that are even further than that. And again, there have been more discoveries of moons around both Saturn and Jupiter, bringing their totals to some astronomical numbers like 700. As far as ring formation, we know that all of the gas giants have a ring system on them. Neptune's is very, very faint, whereas Saturn's is the most pronounced. Jupiter's, that we didn't see the ring system in the image that we saw from Stellarium on it, but it's there. Now, speaking of Uranus, which is pronounced Uranus and not Uranus, let's go find it, because you can see the ring system on that. So we'll search for that. There's Uranus. We will slew the telescope to it, because that's just a part of what we do. And
You know what? You know that Uranus is actually the only other planet other than the Earth that actually is named for a non-Roman god. It's named for a Greek god, which is the god of the sky, and it actually is Oeranus. Actually, in the actual spelling of it, believe it or not, that's a lot of people.
Okay. So that's an interesting fact, because it got translated to Uranus,
right?
And then in common folklore, people looked at it and said Uranus.
Yeah,
now, what's interesting is the way we text nowadays. It's even more translatable to Uranus, because people spell Ur just like the first two letters of Uranus.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of how life is. Now, it's hard to see in a telescope. This is that same view that you saw with Saturn. Uranus ends up being a dot. I'm going to change the atmosphere so that it's more like that color when you're looking at it. You see that blue color. Now, here's the thing. Uranus hasn't risen yet, but it's on its way up. So
it's in opposition, isn't it?
Close? I think it's getting there.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm looking at the date that I have, and I need to move Uranus to where it really is now. So let's do that. There we go. So this was yesterday. We're just going to follow it around. This was yesterday. I'm going to move it until we get to 9:26 at whatever time it really is, 9:31. So I'm watching. Let's move it faster.
9.69 magnitude. So that's about right. That's opposition.
Okay. Let's see, as I got to get to the 21. Now this is
close to opposition. Opposition magnitude is 5.52. So
oops, keep going. There ought to be, I think there's a button to return to. Oh, you know what? The button's right here. It says set time to now. And then stop. Set time to now. So that's currently what Uranus looks like. Whether you're looking at it in a realistic looking sky or the darkest sky, it's a blue, noticeably blue haze. And yes, it's at opposition. So let's zoom in with our powers, and that is what Uranus looks like with Superman powers. Notice that it's moving. So if I center it, now we're tracking it. And this is what Uranus looks like, and this is how the rings would look if you had a powerful enough telescope, or if you flew to Uranus itself. And notice the moons seem interspersed with the rings. I'm not sure if that's truly the case, but they are orbiting. I think it is the case, Ken. They are orbiting. You've got rings, and then you've got moons that are pretty much shepherd moons for these rings.
Right.
And they're all named. I think these are all Greek names too. You have Juliet, no Romeo. Well, too bad.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know why Romeo's not in there. Puck, Ophelia, Cressida.
Maybe Juliet's having an affair with Puck.
That could be the case. And it's all happening on Uranus. So there are some phallic elements to the world of astronomy. Plus, how else are we going to have our fun? All right, so we'll go back to more like 50 degrees.
Always like to point out that Uranus has a tilted a spin that it's 98 degrees as opposed to ours 23 or what ours is. It actually rolls around, just hops around like
the rings are along the equator, so it is rolling more like a wheel through space. And I think the theory is that it took on a major impact that knocked it on its side, literally.
Yep.
But it kept going. So we'll blame that one on Jupiter.
Let's do that.
We're pretty sure that's what it is. All right. So here we are now. Notice we're also, let me move to about 50. There are some meteor showers here. The autumn Aritids, because Aries is nearby, and the southern Taurids, because Taurus, which is right now below the ground, so you can't see it. The Pleiades are there. That is the Pleiades. Taurus will be rising shortly. So you're looking at this and going, how do you know that that's Aries? These three stars here are a part of Aries. And if you don't believe me, let's look at the constellation lines. That's the wrong button. Let's look at, there's the constellations and their names. These are drawings, and we can go even further and draw the mythical creatures. So somehow a ram was made out of those stars. These are the stars that you see, and with the lines drawn, showing constellation lines. These are the mythical creatures drawn to cover basically the part of the sky and give basically a cartoon to the mystical creatures that are there. So let me see if we've got, I'm going to check the chat. A comment from Harmony Smurf: the moons of Uranus require 8 inches or more of aperture. They're really dim. You could, based on what we were talking about, you could take that a couple of ways. I don't think 8 inches is enough if you talk strictly astronomy. You know, in astronomy terms, I think you need 30 to actually see it. But if we're talking about affairs and Juliet, then that could take on a whole different meaning. Let me re-link for those that are joining the chat. I'm inviting you to join me directly on the Zoom chat that I'm using to share the information about Stellarium. You can come aboard and feel free to ask questions directly there in the Zoom call, or feel free to stay on the chat while we go over. We're going to go over some of these constellations here and what you would see if it wasn't cloudy. See, we have a new let's see, admit. So welcome to the Zoom room, Nick. And anyone else that would like to join, feel free to join. That way you can ask questions if there's something you want to see. You can type those in the chat as well. I'll be looking at the chat periodically throughout this. So I like to talk about Perseus, Pegasus, and the mythology that's going on here with Perseus. The Western drawing actually has Algol, and I'm gonna turn these star names on. I think I don't have the labels going. Let's see, cardinal points, deep sky objects, planet labels. We'll roll in. Okay, so Algol and Gorgona Tertia are actually the eyes of Medusa. So you're looking at Pegasus this is about how it would look. And if I take out the lines, I think if I go like this, I'll take everything out. You're looking at Pegasus and you're seeing this line, this bright star, this star here, Merfac. You would see that in the night sky. And if it's dark enough, you see the wisp of the Milky Way going through it. But when drawing out the Western version of it, you have Perseus holding the head of Medusa. So Algol and this other star, Gorgona Tertia, you're actually looking into the eyes of Medusa. So if you turn into stone, it's not my fault. I warned you where not to look. Actually, I've tried it. You don't turn into stone. You just you just don't. Because it's all in the heavens now. But I always found it interesting that Medusa is actually represented in the Western night sky, even if it's just her head. Speaking of bodiless, there's another constellation, Aquelus, I think is the pronunciation of this. You have a horse with no body, just a head floating next to Pegasus. And then there's Delphinus the dolphin, which actually does look like it's drawing. You would, if I take the labels out, I think I can do that with this. And that's the drawing. You could see how you could get a dolphin out of that. So some constellations look the way that they, it's easy to imagine. Other constellations are a bit of a stretch. Pegasus, kind of easy to imagine. Andromeda is actually a stretch because without the drawing, you've got a line and another line leading up to the Andromeda galaxy. So so if you look at the Western drawings, it's a bit of a stretch, but these are the agreed upon drawings. Aries especially, you get a ram out of 3 stars. So that's just the way it is. There's Cassiopeia, the queen, and Cephas, the king, with a lizard coming right at him. These constellations were commissioned, put into the night sky, and it depended on what people saw and what people were able to imagine. Here we have Camelopardalis, the big giraffe. You may not have known that constellation existed. We have Lynx, which is setting, and the Dipper, which is rolling along the horizon. There's Ursa Major. And following him are the 2 hunting dogs of Canes Venatici. So, it looks like the hunting dogs are chasing the Great Bear. They must be some wildly angry hunting dogs, or that's what they do. There's the little bear, Ursa Minor, looking at the whole scene, kind of like he's concerned for Papa or Mama. And he's below the great dragon. Now, in mythology, I had always pictured Hercules. If I take away these, I always felt that Hercules would be facing this way, chopping at the head of Drago the dragon. But the drawings in Stellarium are telling a different story. Hercules is busy trying to chop off the necks of these snakes. So this drawing is far different from what I had pictured going on in this scene with Hercules, and Drago is just kind of there. He's looking at Cygnus the swan. There's Lyra the lyre, Vulpecula the fox. Here's a good constellation to explain. Vulpecula is these 2 stars. If I put the lines back on, that's it. So use your imagination and come up with a giant fox. Good luck with that. But Sagitta, on the other hand, here are the stars of Sagitta, and you'd say, they look kind of like an arrow. Well, you'd be right. Sagitta is the arrow that just missed Aquila the eagle. You could get an eagle out of this with the lines here, these stars forming a line and this forming the neck of an eagle. So I could see how that would work. Ophiuchus, you could see how Ophiuchus, the snake charmer, you could see how that might work. Sagittarius, a little tougher to tell because, in all honesty, these stars look more like a teapot. Interesting thing about the teapot is that's where the center of the Milky Way galaxy is. Sagittarius A star is somewhere in here, and I'm not even sure if you can find that. Let's see if Stellarium knows about that. Sagittarius A. Let's see, Sagittarius A. It probably doesn't know that. I'll try Sag.
One less G, by the way. You had 2 G's in there.
Okay, that might have been why I didn't find it. Sagittarius A, there it is.
About that.
Sagittarius A West and Sagittarius A West. We'll just go here. And there you go. Let's zoom in. This is the area in which the center of our Milky Way galaxy is located. So there is this star here, which is technically a part of Sagittarius. You will see if you're looking in the night sky, you're going to be looking about like this. You're going to see Sagittarius, and where that's flashing is the center of the galaxy, center of our home galaxy. And if you notice, it's starting to slowly set. In summer, it's much more prevalent. It's higher in the sky than it is now. As we go into fall, we're making way for the winter constellations, which again are rising. Right now, the water-bearing signs are up. There's Fomolo, which is actually a part of Pisces. So we'll show the constellations again. There's Pisces Austrinus, the fish that's nibbling at the foot of Aquarius, who's dumping water out onto nothing in particular. Sculptor, which is mostly southern constellation, but we can see a part of it here in the northern climes, is setting right now. Or is it? I think it's actually rising. We can see more of Sculptor usually up here.
Rising.
Yeah, it is rising because we're in the southeast. In the southeast to the east, these constellations are rising. In fact, I can prove it by speeding up time. This is what time is going to do. So yeah, we can see all of Sculptor. We'll stop time here. This is a little later on. We see something else rising here that looks like another bird. Let's fast forward, and it doesn't rise high enough. I believe this is Groose, Ken, or anyone else on the stream. That is Groose, the goose. Don't think it's a Canada goose, but we can
it's a Roman
see
goose.
yeah. We can see a precious few constellations that are much better visible in the southern climes, closer to the equator, even in the southern hemisphere. So that's one of them that is very prominent during the winter months. Here is summer in the southern hemisphere, and it's high in anything that you're seeing here along our horizon is high in the sky in the southern hemisphere. So here's a constellation that you never knew existed. These few stars here that you probably would barely see. No, you can barely see them at all with normal brightness from the moon. But it's got a constellation all to itself. It's called Microscopium. Any guess as to what Microscopium is? Don't guess, because it's very simple. It's a microscope. There are constellations that were simply named after objects. Not all of them were from mythology.
Well, Miss Microscopium is a relatively newer named one. There's many of the southern constellations are newer named because they weren't seen as much by the earlier groups that were, the Romans and so on and so forth, didn't see the southern hemisphere particularly well. So yeah, a lot of those names are much more current.
Yeah, and they instead of making up animals and stories, some of them they did. I'm not sure which this one is, but I can figure it out. This is Phoenix, I believe. Not sure, but Fornax to Furnace rises. Cetus, the great big sea monster. Now, here's what we're going to do. There's a setting here, sky and viewing options, that you can do in Stellarium for star lore. So we're familiar with the Western renderings of these constellations, but the Mayans had a different view. The Mayans looked at where we were. So the southern Taurids, remember Taurus, the bull is over here somewhere. This is considered the bat. The constellation lines are done completely differently. This was considered a vulture. This was considered an owl. So let's find the lines to Taurus. And actually, this is it right here. In the Mayan world, this was considered Taurus. Or no, in the Mayan world, this is considered an owl. And this is how they drew the constellation. But we, in the Western side of the world, if it works, said, nah, this is Taurus the bull. So constellations differ depending on which culture you're in, and Stellarium helps you see that. So that is one interesting fact about Stellarium, is you can actually go through this and you can see how different cultures name these things. Hawaiian star lines. Let's check that out. The Hawaiian star lines called the Pleiades the chief's eyes. And this is the canoe Baylor of Macaulay. They drew a canoe, and if we go ahead and speed up time so we can see it rise, they call Orion the cat's cradle. You'll probably notice that. And that's good enough right there. So instead of this being Orion fighting a bull over here, and instead of this star being Aldebaran, this is their name for this star. Hokula, Kaula Koko, Puanakau, Bellatrix. It's still named Bellatrix. Or that it may be a mistake from not changing the name from the Western or the Arabic name of it. But this ginormous area is a constellation in the Hawaiian star lines, and there's an actual explanation here. These are the star lines developed by Nina Thompson. You can read this. The Polynesian Voyaging Society to navigate Polynesian sailing canoes. And so that's why it became the canoe. So our interpretation isn't necessarily the only one. Japanese moon stations, let's check that out, because I believe, well, let's see what we got, because I want to say Subaru. And actually, no, this is, let's see what it says here. The astronomical observation until the Meiji restoration was closely tied to astrological purposes. So just reading this here, turtle snout instead of Orion, investigator, net, a stopping place, a well. Very minimal. There aren't any large, elaborate constellations drawn over here. And it's interesting how different the same night sky and the mythology that we're used to, how it changes when you go to different cultures. So at some point I should be able to move this. So we'll go back to the Western culture. If there's a particular culture you're interested in, let me know. But for now, we'll go back to the culture that we in America know. Orion, and not only America, but the UK. These are common around the world as far as constellation, generally accepted constellation names and lines are drawn. And so here it shows that at 3 in the morning is when the winter constellations arise. And I found an interesting fact about the twins, Pollux and Castor. Pollux is also known as Hercules. And then Castor, named after, it says Apollo. So apparently their parents made a deal with whoever puts people in the night sky and said, I want my boys in the night sky. I named one after Hercules and I named the other after Apollo. Can you put them in the night sky? And so they agreed, and now they're sitting here hanging out and watching this scene as it unfolds. Monoceros, the fighting unicorn, Canis Minor about to bite Pollux. So, you know, we'll see how Herculean you really are when this dog gets to you. You have Lepus who's, you have Lepus running away from Sirius. Go ahead, Ken.
There's a couple of interesting factors. The stars, the ones that we're looking at right now were kind of an agreement by astronomers in the mid 1600s to so that one astronomer could talk to another. And why this particular culture was accepted was so that if I tell you it's the Alpha Star in Scorpius, for example, it's they know what they're looking at. The other thing is the interesting thing is there's two constellations where the Alpha Star is actually dimmer than the Beta Star, and that usually
looking at one right now.
There's one of them, Orion, right there. And one of the reasons that Orion was why Betelgeuse was named the Alpha Star is, you know, it is a variable star, of course, and it changes its brightness, but it's also red. And being red, the eye, they all knew that the eye does not pick up red as well as it picks up the rest. So they figured that Betelgeuse is close enough, it's probably brighter than Rigel. And of course, the other one was Castor and Pollux. Castor's the Alpha Star, Pollux is the Beta Star. And the reason that happened is because Castor's faded from the time that it was named as the brighter star. So that's an interesting reasoning between those two. Just thought I'd throw that
very
in
interesting.
there.
And
I'm almost embarrassed. I know that.
Right. And so, they're, you know, these constellations have been in the sky over longer periods of time than we've been alive. And, right now, our skies look kind of like this. So when we look at the night sky, this is considered a good rural sky. If you were looking up in the night sky and you'd say, oh, we got a lot of stars here, that's pretty good. I typically imaging at Lake Hudson, this is pretty much what it looks like on a good night, but it gets a whole lot darker. This is what we all yearn to see, is something this dark. Now you're seeing some things around Orion. We're going to zoom in. You're seeing some nebulosity here, and you're probably wondering if you could see that in real time if you were looking at a dark side. And the answer is no. This nebulosity is what's actually there, but it takes imaging to bring it out. It's very faint. Now you would see the color of the Orion Nebula. You would see that color, but you wouldn't necessarily see, if I zoom out, what you're seeing looks more like this, and this is at a 60-degree view. without all the nebulosity, all of the stars that are around, this is what you would see. Truly dark side. I'm moving in just okay. So that's what you would see. And the Milky Way, would it be this bright? I've seen it a little dimmer than this. The rosette right here. That's not the rosette. Is that the rosette? I'm not sure that is, but I'm going to zoom in and find out. Let's center this. It is. So the Rosette Nebula is not visible like that. You would mostly see just the star cluster that is a part of it, which is actually an IC number. These line stars here is what you would see naked eye, but we have imagers that have pulled all the rest of this. This gets its name to Rosette Nebula for very obvious reasons. It looks like a rose. But yeah, what you see in the night sky looks more like this. With Orion, you see just a lot of stars around it. I started calling the stars, these three stars in between, I started calling it his vest. I would notice that I wouldn't see those stars unless I was someplace dark enough to actually see them. And so over here, now you notice this, they call it the Witch Head Nebula, right off of Rigel. It's being illuminated by Rigel, and this is a pretty good rendering of what it looks like. You have to flip this upside down to see how it could, how it could look like a witch's head. So, and then you've got Great Orion Nebula in here. And if I click on anything that's within that and center it, so this is a pretty good rendering. It actually resembles a blown out rendering of this part of the trapezium. There are other stars here. One of the limitations of Stellarium is it chooses to show an astrophotography picture of what you're looking at, and this image is blown out, but it gives you an idea of what you can see. So let's carry on. We can move a little further back. One thing that I'm looking to image is this region here with the belt and with the sword. This is the and it's a very good rendering of it, the famous Barnard 33, IC 434 behind it, and the Flame Nebula, which I believe is an NGC object. That's in there. Ed Norris says, thanks, I'm jumping over to New Mexico. Go and enjoy, Ed. If it's not too windy there, Brian will be up. And I invite all of you who are watching, if you would like to see a live view of the night sky, by all means, jump on over. You too can, if you want to check it out, jump on over to Brian's, jump on over to Dr. Brian Adam. He's doing a remote live viewing session from his observatory in New Mexico. Now he's here in Michigan, but his observatory is in New Mexico. And that's how he is able to show you the night sky, even though it's cloudy here.
There's another star in Orion, up at the head of Orion, which is interesting in itself. The one that's up there, Mesa.
Mesa, yep.
Mesa is a multiple star system of 6 stars. It's okay. Probably the most active of all the large, not just binary but trinary. I guess it's sectile. I don't know what it is. But anyway, there's 6 stars in that system actually going around that star. I think that's rather interesting in itself.
Yep, I agree. Okay, so it's 10 o'clock. I was supposed to be on for an hour, and then you would have the opportunity to go and view night sky viewing. So if you are interested in the night sky, feel free to jump over there. Before I wrap up, I'm going to show you what my intended image target is, and I'm going to do it using the I'm going to pretend to be in the telescope one more time. So let's see, I'm going to select on attack, and then I'm going to say that's the current object. So we're slewing our telescope over. There it comes from wherever it was. And this time I'm going to use the camera view. That's really bright. What do I have? I got an EOS 450D. It's an APS-C. If I were to attach that camera to the McMath, it'd be nothing but a bright star. So let's move along. If I attach my camera to an F5 telescope, however, I would get a part of the horse head here and the flame. But I want something different. And this is a little meaty XT90. I would miss the horse head if I had that camera on it. So let's keep going. If I hook up a camera to it, here is, let's see, and then I'll go to my full frame camera, the 6D, and my 200 millimeter lens. And if I center it properly, look what I got. Stellarium helps me to plan how I want to shoot the night sky. And this is what I want to shoot. So later, right now, I'd have to get up at 3:35 in the morning to shoot this and take some frames. What I would prefer to do is wait a little bit till it rises a little earlier and earlier in the night sky. So when should I come out to see it? Let's find out. Let's put in a date and time that I think we should see it. I think I should wait till November. Let's go to my birthday, November 8th. And let's view it at, oh, here it comes. That is 11. And it's in that part of the sky at 11:36 p.m. So now I can say, well, on my birthday at 11:36 p.m. at night, I can start taking images because this part of Orion will be in my view, and I'll be able to take this image of the belt and hopefully come out with something that looks similar, where I've got the horse head, I've got the flame, and I've got all the nebulosity over here from the Running Man and from Orion, the Orion Nebula. Now, to do that, I would try a crop sensor camera, because I've got a crop sensor camera that is that has the full spectrum, so I can get all the light. But as you can see, I'm running into a problem with this lens. What would I have to do? I'd have to go down to 135. So my telescoping lens, I would take it to 135 millimeters and get the view that I want, and I would get the nebulosity that I want, because I would be using my full frame, well, not full frame, but full light spectrum camera, and I would get this image. Now, would I get this image as well? I don't know. It would be worth a shot to see, but my main target would be the nebulas here, the emission nebula, the dark nebula, all of these lit up by stars. This entire, as you can tell, the entire Orion constellation is considered a complex. There's just so much nebulosity there. And a couple of our imagers have actually imaged that. and they did a pretty fantastic job with it. So that's what I have. Let me check back to see if anybody is left on the live stream. Don't know, Harmony, if you're still out there or if you've jumped like everyone else should be. I see there's only 2 concurrent viewers, so everyone's going to see as they should. They should go see Brian Adams streaming. And to
Thanks,
the 2
Adrian.
that's left, I think that just maybe me and you, Ken.
Thank you very much. Great job.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And I may do a if there's a need for a talk on some of the finer points of Stellarium, I may do it for the Warren Astronomical Society at some point. Take some questions about how Stellarium does some of the things it does. It's not bad. I do use Sky Safari for controlling the telescope. I can use Stellarium. I tried it, and it's nice, but it does not contain the ability to control your telescope and fine tune it after you get to your destination, which isn't so good. You know, I'd like to be able to do that. Sky Safari allows you to do that. So,
okay.
So that's just kind of the way that goes.
Take care of yourself, my friend.
All right, you too, Ken. For those of you that are on the Zoom, I'm going to go ahead and end it. Thank you all for joining, and hopefully you learned anything. If you my email, atbsigma@gmail.com, if you have any other questions. And enjoy the night viewing for Astronomy at the Beach. Don't forget to fill out the survey. Thank you all.